hadn't let anyone in. What happened? So he looked in through the window and he saw there was nobody there. But Prabhupada was talking. Then he looked more carefully, and just imagine if Prabhupada was sitting here, just for argument's sake, and Prabhupada's looking over at Gauranga. It's okay. Like there's someone there. So the devotee's looking in the window, because the windows are on that side. And he looked very carefully, and you know what he saw? A mouse. There was a mouse there. And the mouse was sitting, looking up at Prabhupada. Yes. And Prabhupada continued preaching to the mouse. So, yeah. Even if there's not even a mouse, you can always practice, practice giving a class or something. But, yes, I was told I should say something about chanting the holy names. So I'll do that. And if I can find the second verse I was thinking of reading, then I'll read 2 verses. But if I can't, I'll just read 1 verse. Yes, okay. So I will read from the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The 9th chapter, the most confidential knowledge, and I will read verse 14, which of course is a very famous verse. I think you all know that verse. All know that verse. Chapter 9, verse 14. You know that verse?
I'm searching it up right now.
Okay. Satatan kirti yantomam yatantas chadradhavrata namasyantas chamam bhaktya nitya yuktarupasate, always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. And let's see, I don't know. Yeah, okay, let me read the purport. The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. You understand the idea of rubber stamping? You can get rubber stamps made for, like, for example, if there's a receipt book, which you don't use very much. So you just, when you use it, you just use a rubber stamp. So rubber stamping a person means you take a rubber stamp and ink it and stamp it on his forehead. And it says, Mahatma. So you cannot cannot manufacture a Mahatma by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He's always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. And in other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising his holy name, his eternal form, his transcendental qualities, and his uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who's attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmajyoti, is not described as Mahatma in the Bhagavad Gita. He's described in a different way in the next verse. The Mahatma is always engaged in different activities of devotional service, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or human being. That is devotion. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu and Smaranam, remembering him. Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily, and vocal, everything in the service of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. That is called full Krishna consciousness. In devotional service, there are certain activities which are called determined, such as fasting on different days, like the 11th day of the moon, Ekadasi, and on the appearance day of the Lord. All these rules and regulations are offered by the great acharyas for those who are actually interested in getting admission into the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world. The Mahatmas, great souls, strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they're sure to achieve the desired result. As described in the 2nd verse of this chapter, not only is this devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood. One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. He can live this life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a householder, or as a sannyasi, or a brahmachari. In any position and anywhere in the world, he can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul. Isn't that wonderful? Anyway, it's very significant actually. Let me just read the verse again. Satatam kirtayanto mam, yatantas chadridhavrata, namas yantas chamam bhaktya, nitya yukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Hare Krishna. Yes, so devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the glorious devotees. The reason I picked this verse, and there's another verse, I can't remember what the verse number is, but anyway. The reason I picked this particular verse is because here, Arjuna has asked a question. Well, basically he's asking about who is a devotee. How can we recognize a devotee? What is like the symptom or the sign that someone is a devotee, as opposed to just, any ordinary sort of person. And Lord Krishna, he in the previous verse 13, let me just read the translation. O son of Prita, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They're fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So the thing is here, in that verse 13, Lord Krishna is speaking in a very general sense that the Mahatmas, although he only uses the term Mahatma in verse 14, which we sort of focusing on, but in this verse 13, he is, Lord Krishna uses the term Mahatma, Mahatmanas Tumam Parta. So he's describing in a general sense, who are these great souls, who are these devotees? And the basic point in this previous verse is that the Mahatmas, or the devotees, the serious devotees, they're protected by the divine nature and they are fully engaged in devotional service. So now so that's a general sort of description, like a general reference to the advanced devotees. But now in this verse 14, he specifically lists out, gives a short list of what specifically the Mahatmas, the advanced devotees, do. Certain particular activities. And what is the first thing? The first thing is satatam kirtayanto mam. Krishna says, satatam, constantly, kirtayanto, chanting, kirtayanto mam, chanting my glories, always chanting my glories. And then other things also, yatantascha dridhavrata. Dridhavrata means very determined. So they make all their efforts in Krishna consciousness with great determination. I mentioned the other evening, was it? I think I did, yeah. In the festival, Prabhupada made the point that in Krishna consciousness, there's not really any place for lazies or crazies. Crazies is one thing, that's pretty extreme. But lazies, it's not unusual for people to sometimes feel a bit lazy. Yeah, sometimes it happens. Want to take a break. But the Mahatmas, the advanced devotees, they're always endeavoring with great determination. They're not lazies at all. They're just really not lazies. And namasyantas chamam bhaktya. They're always bowing down before me, offering namaskars. It's like that, offering respects to me, to Krishna. Namasyantas cha mam bhaktya. Offering respects to me in a mood of devotion. And nitya yukta upasate. Nitya, they're just always yukta. Yukta is sort of a synonym for yoga to some degree, like synonym, like 6 and half a dozen. These are synonyms, same thing, either 6 or half a dozen. It's just the same. So yoga and yukta, they're basically the same. And yukta, therefore, like yoga, ultimately means to link with God. Yukta means the same thing. And that's what Krishna's, or how Prabhupada has translated it, that these great souls, the Mahatmas, they perpetually worship me, nitya, yukta, upasate. They perpetually, constantly worship me with devotion. But first thing is, they're always chanting Krishna's glories. Always chanting the holy names of the Lord, or chanting Bhagavad Gita, or chanting Srimad Bhagavatam, or chanting some nice Vaishnava song, but they're always doing something along these lines. And, so this is the first specific activity that Lord Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita. I mean, in this context at least, that the advanced devotees particularly do. They do so many things, of course. But amongst all those many things, the first thing, specific activity, is they always chant Krishna's glories. Yeah. Right. So, and an interesting point is that this, when Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, it was not Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, as soon as Krishna left this world, which was some years after he spoke Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield. So a good few years later, how many years is it? 25 or 20, I forget the exact number. But quite a few years later, he left this world. As soon as he left this world, Kali Yuga just started just like that. Yeah. But up until then, it was Dwapara Yuga. And in Dwapara Yuga, the activity, the main activity for devotees is not chanting the glories of the Lord or chanting the holy names of the Lord. Although it's there, but certainly at least we can say in Scripture, the chanting is only specifically emphasized for Kali Yuga. Hare Krishna. Oh, Hare Krishna, look at this. Our numbers, the crowd is swelling. Soon we'll be packed out. Betiye Aap. Yes. Prisajivayatas. Sajasta. Yes, so this is an interesting point. That here, and it's not the only place in Bhagavad Gita. There's this other verse I was trying to locate. I was a bit late to do it, but are you a Bhagavad? Well, the devotees chant the glories of the Lord, but the demons sort of run in fear when the holy names of the Lord are chanted. You know that verse?
I'm searching for it.
Anyway, it's okay. But yeah, like when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, you know, there's a few places in Bhagavad Gita where the chanting is specifically mentioned. This is one place, chapter 9, verse 14, and then this other verse. Anyway, so there's another verse too. But in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's numerous places where chanting the holy names is emphasized. And in a broader sense, chanting the glories of the Lord, be it like reading from scripture, chanting or hearing devotees discussing about scripture, and chanting the holy names and hearing the chanting of the holy names. So of course Bhagavad Gita is, in a historical sense, is specifically spoken in Dwapara Yuga, although it's an eternally relevant literature which is present usually in all the ages. But in the Bhagavatam jumps all around from, Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, that's right in the beginning of Satya Yuga, and right through to the sages in Naimisharanya, that is actually in Kali Yuga, because Krishna's already left this world when those sages...
1136.
What is it?
1136.
Just read it for us.
Yeah. Arjuna said, O master of the senses, the world becomes joyful upon hearing your name, and thus everyone becomes attached to you. Although the perfected beings offer you their respectful homage, the demons are afraid and they flee here and there. All this is rightly done.
That's right. Thank you. That's the one. That's the one. Yeah, so the world becomes happy when the chanting of the holy names goes on. So it's interesting. This is Dwapara Yuga, and there's so many different incidents where chanting the glories of the Lord in one way or another is emphasized in different yugas. So my point in this regard then is that this practice of chanting the glories of the Lord, or shall we say, chanting the holy names of the Lord, is always relevant. And not just always relevant, but ultimately it's always the most relevant and most suitable activity in any yuga. In any yuga. Yes, even though in Satya Yuga, the recommended activity or most commonly practiced activity is silent meditation on the Lord. Krite Yad, Hare Krishna. No. See, we're going to fill up. Your house will be full. Right. So particularly the chanting of the holy names, with chanting the glories of the Lord, hearing the glories of the Lord. I mean, in a sense, chanting Hare Krishna is a form of it as Satya Yuga, but it is the Krita Yuga. So Krita Yuga, Jayato Vishnu. The recommended activity, or the activity that most people did, was silent meditation on Lord Vishnu. And then Tretiyam Yajato Makai. In the Treta Yuga, the recommended activity or popular activity was yaja or yagya, fire sacrifice. And then Dwarparam, Paracharyavam, Dwarpa Yuga. Paracharyavam more or less sort of literally means serving the Lord. It's indicating deity worship. This is how one would serve the Lord in the sense of cook for him and dress him and decorate him and, all these types of things. Yeah, that's service to the Lord in a personal form, Paracharyavam. But then Kalo, in the Kali Yuga, Hari Kirtanat. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is it? Kalo Tad Hari Kirtanat or Nam, I forget the ending. Yeah, chanting the holy names is a special thing for Kali Yuga, but like we just said, we notice, particularly if we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we notice that glorifying the Lord and particularly often actually chanting His glories, chanting His holy names, is being recommended in Satya Yuga, in Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga. It's very universal. Very universal. And, not so much. Anyway, let's just put it like that. So, therefore, the chanting of the holy names, chanting the glories of the Lord, it is eternally relevant. Now, in Kali Yuga, to do silent meditation is certainly not universally relevant just for everybody. Some person's walking in the street, hey, do silent meditation on the Lord. It's not relevant. It's only relevant for devotees who've already made some advancement. And then they're given second initiation. And then they chant Gayatri mantras. This is our silent meditation. Yeah. And one has to be qualified enough. Yeah, I suppose in Hinduism, like generally, but definitely in the Western world, when the word yoga is mentioned, immediately people think someone sitting like Prabhu is sitting, more or less. Yeah, sort of like that sort of thing. That's what they think. Yoga, meditation. But the problem with that is, unless you've already sort of, to some degree, got control of your mind, at least to some reasonable degree, if you try and do that silent meditation, then it'll be very difficult because your mind will be going here and there. Particularly in the modern day house, family house, where the children, if it's a Hindu house, the children are playing, or probably some Western rock and roll music. The parents are playing the theme song for Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. And everybody else has the television on. And there you are in your room trying to do silent meditation. But it's not easy. But this chanting of the holy names, I think we've all had experience, I assume, we've all been on Harinam before, maybe many times. And you can be, I mean, what to speak of being in Port Louis or, Cure Peep, someplace like that, a relatively bigger Mauritian town. But you can be right in the center of London, New York, on a Saturday around midday, where it's the busiest time. People are running around shopping and all that. But the devotees, we've had experience, I've had so much experience, going out on Harinam at that time on Saturday and going through, the middle of the day where everything is most intense. I mean, shopping-wise. But we're chanting the holy names and we become absorbed in chanting the holy names. And, I mean, at least if we apply ourselves a bit, we get absorbed. And we're not in shopping consciousness, looking in the shop, looking in that shop, and, etc. What sort of car? And, who's this? What are they wearing? All these types of things. But the devotees become oblivious to the surroundings, even in a big city, big noisy, dirty city, with vehicles all over the place and just crowds of people and noise, etc. But the devotees are in another world. They're in another world. They're absorbed in the chanting. And so they're not preoccupied as the ordinary people are preoccupied with window shopping and all these types of things. It's a very important point. Try going to, I don't know what is the busiest shopping place in Mauritius. What is it? Center of...
Rosine.
Everywhere, Maharaj.
Oh, okay.
It's full everywhere.
I've seen in Flack it gets busy sometimes.
But Rosine is much more busier.
Is it?
Yeah.
Cure Peep, not so much?
Cure Peep?
Not so much.
No, compared to Rosine.
Rose Hill.
Rosine, yeah.
Okay, Rose
It's
Hill.
like where every shop is there,
Right. Yes, so, Rose Hill. People are really preoccupied. But the devotees, when they go on Harinam, at least, when they make a little effort to get into it, then they're in another world. And it's a much better world. It's a much nicer world, a transcendental realm with Krishna and with the other devotees. I remember when I first, it was January 1973, I joined in the temple in London, 7th of January, and our program was Monday to Saturday, Harinam. Hare Krishna. Welcome. Hare Krishna. Look at this, we're almost overflowing now.
You want to?
There's chairs here, yeah. The chairs are lonely. Give them some association. But where was I? I was in Rose Hill.
You were saying you said.
Oh yes, when I joined the temple. And what we did, in the morning about 9, we went out, because the temple was just about 5 minutes walk from the actual main street of London, which Oxford Street. Big, busy shopping street, I mean. To walk from one end to the other It's like 45 minutes or an hour. It's a major street, and it's just shops. So, so we, from 9 till about 12:30, we were out. Then we came back to the temple, 5 minutes walk, came back to the temple and had lunch. And around 2, we went out again. And we came back about 6, 5:30 to 6, more like 6. And that's what we did, full stop. Except Sunday. We had the Sunday program, so we got involved with that. But the other Monday to Saturday, that's what we did. And we didn't actually do anything else at all. I mean, unless there was some special festival occasion, but, that's maybe once a month or so. So yes, so there we were. And, I was not used to these things, because I was just coming from material existence. So how to keep myself focused and not, end up looking in the shops and looking at the people and so on and so forth. So you know what I did? I made a practice of just, because we're in 2 rows of devotees, like each row is maybe 15 or 20 devotees, and I'm somewhere in the middle of one of the rows. And I would just look at the back of the devotee in front of me. Yeah. And just by doing that, just for a little while, I sort of got, what would you say, vaccinated. Don't tell the American government I use this word, but I sort of became vaccinated against the whole scene there in Oxford Street, which is, it's intense. It's really intense in terms of shopping and all that. But can you imagine what to speak of, like in central London, but just in Rose Hill at 12 o'clock on Saturday, trying to sit down on the side of the street and do your, silent meditation. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Because people, in order to become absorbed in it, in a sort of natural type of way, you have to already have experience in Krishna consciousness, and not just experience, but you have to already have achieved at least a bit of advancement, maybe nothing too astronomical, but at least a bit of advancement in that you're able to sit down and chant these mantras and keep focused and not have your mind going off here and there. So you get the idea. Or to do yajna. Can you imagine doing a fire yajna in Rose Hill? Or doing worship? It's not really, I mean, we do Rath Yatra worship. It's not like what I assume you do every day or however often here. Yeah, I mean, it's very publicly oriented deity worship. Actually, the worship of Jagannath is not so much that he's on the altar. He is worshipped by Rath Yatra. That's the main way Jagannath is worshipped. Yes. Right. Although, so many devotees and temples have Jagannath on their altars. Yes, right. So, when we go out chanting in the streets, provided we do get absorbed and we make a little effort just to get started, then we become absorbed and the surroundings don't really influence us, at least not much. And if you get really into it, the surroundings don't influence you at all. But you're just, in a special world with Krishna. Prabhupada called it a Vaikuntha bubble. And if you heard that term, a Vaikuntha bubble, the devotees get into, even when they're out in the streets, they get into a Vaikuntha bubble through chanting. And like when devotees distribute Prabhupada's books, then the devotee is already in the Vaikuntha bubble, and he pulls the non-devotee into the Vaikuntha bubble and gives the non-devotee a book and says a few things. And, so many people, they will take a book and then they step out of the Vaikuntha bubble back into the ordinary world with their book, their new book. And sometimes I've seen the people take a few steps and they turn back and look at you like, what happened? How did this happen? Yeah. Vaikuntha bubbles. Yeah, it's really nice. So there you go, devotees. We should, as Krishna says, we should always chant his glories. Yeah. Satatam, always. Kirtayanto mam. Chant my glories. Yeah. And the other verse, what? 11:36.
11:36.
36. Yes, right. Yeah, it's Arjuna. Arjuna Vacha Stane Rishikesha Tava Prakirtya Jagat Prarishyat Yanurajate Cha Rakshamse Bhutani Disho Dravanti Sarve Namasyanti Chasiddha Sangha. Arjuna said, O master of the senses, the world becomes joyful upon hearing your name, and thus everyone becomes attached to you. Although the perfected beings offer you their respectful homage, the demons are afraid, and they flee here and there when they hear the Lord's names. All this is rightly done. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Killer Teal. Okay, devotees, Hare Krishna. Yes.
Can I ask
Yes, I was going to ask for questions, comments.
2 questions?
Yes. 3.
The third will come from the crowd. It's like a practical application of what you just talked about. Like Krishna's mentioning Sadatam Kirtayantu Mam, always chant my glories. Like for somebody who is like working in the corporate world and how can we practically apply this Sadatam? Because going to the office, going in meetings, we're not
Sure.
straight away discussing Vishnu Katha.
Right. Well, even devotees who are living in temples face similar challenges in certain respects. We have the morning program, and we're having an evening program here. But at least devotees generally have a morning program. If they're staying in a temple or if they're staying at home, yes, some sort of morning program. So then the devotees have to do their service. And when they're doing their service, it depends what the service is. They may have to drive around, or they may have to cook, or play a recording of chanting. If you're cooking, you can. Anyway, of course, one thing is, you've got to keep your attention on what you're doing. Yeah. Got to keep your attention on what you're doing. So therefore, even for many devotees who are doing their service during what is regularly the working day, they can't just chant. They have to really keep focused on what they're doing. I mean, in certain situations, aren't or hear the chanting, but not always. Depends. I mean, so many things depend on different things, but in this case, it depends what sort of work you're actually doing. Because with some types of work, like if you are operating a computer and just doing data entry, you can have some earphones on and have kirtan going the whole day. Yeah, if you cook, different types of work have more or less, sort of opportunity for Krishna consciousness. But yeah, if you've got to go to a meeting with the big boss, and you've got to give a report and you've got to be on your toes, then, well, you've got to do it. But the thing is, as much as possible, when working, devotees should have some Krishna consciousness going on. If one has an office, then you can have, hopefully, at least in a sort of a Hindu environment like this, can have a picture of Krishna, something like that, in your office or your cubicle, something like that to remind you of Krishna. But even if you can't really do things like that, the thing is this, that your work, it's not just work, it's a type of service. Means you work, you get paid, and then you use the money. If your family is devotees, which is generally the case, then your money is used to maintain the family who are devotees. So it's devotional service, the utilization of the money. And the way of acquiring the money, doing the job, is indirectly, directly or indirectly, a form of service. And one should try and see it like that I'm working not just to get promoted, but I'm working to maintain my devotee family and maintain myself as a devotee, which is a fact, actually. And not just get sort of caught up in the details of the work, like obsessed with it. You may have heard a very interesting little story about Jayananda Prabhu. So I'm sure many of you heard of Jayananda. He was one of Prabhupada's first disciples. And he had a university degree, and he was a bit older. He was maybe he was around 30 or something. And he was a very responsibly minded person. And Prabhupada really appreciated him. And he became president of the temple in San Francisco, very early on, because he was competent. You know? He was competent, and he was very serious about Krishna consciousness. So that the temple had no money, and there was book distribution and donation collecting had not started at all. Literally, not at all. In fact, there were no books to distribute initially. So what to do? All the devotees had to get jobs. And he got a job. Now he had a degree in engineering, but he got a job in their material goals. I drive the businessman to a business meeting so he can make money. I drive some young man to visit his girlfriend for some illicit relatives. And I'm facilitating degradation. And this is terrible. And I'm really not happy about it, because I'm just so much in Maya. Prabhupada wrote back, actually, you are doing pure devotional service. Because in that particular case, you're using the money for running the temple. Now, to run, so to speak, a very different extreme of perspective. So one should think like that in terms of the longer term, the goals, and not just that, I'm wheeling and dealing and...
The mind refuses to enter this Vaikuntha Bhava, or maybe in the Vaikuntha Bhava, but then, the phone is handy and we start WhatsApping and checking out something.
And when we're doing our work, we should have a transcendental perspective on it, but then we're doing our work. We should try like that as much as possible. It's one of Mahatma Prabhu's, what does he call them? I forget what he calls them. His stimulating thoughts.
Affirmations?
Affirmations, it's one of his affirmations. When I chant, I chant. Yeah. So as much as possible, we should try. One who follows the discipline, Krishna conscious discipline. So we have to try and do that. Old habits die hard, of course. And if we're not attentive in our chanting, we won't get so much sort of feedback or result coming from Krishna. And the mind will be more easily distracted. Yeah, so we really need to try to be attentive when we chant. Because if we can be attentive, then it becomes really nice. Just really nice. And then you enter your Vaikuntha bubble. Yeah. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Prabhuji.
What role does the quality of the chanting and the Vaishnava relationships, how these both of them are correlated to each other?
Well, Prabhupada, if I remember correct, I don't know, maybe it's in Nectar of Devotion, but it's somewhere. Prabhupada makes the point that you're the sort of, the nature or the transcendentalness of your consciousness and your program during the day will be a reflection of how your chanting was. So similarly, our devotee relationships, the quality of our chanting definitely plays a big part, because the quality of our chanting prepares our consciousness. And if the consciousness is, as Haridev Prabhu said, peaceful, and Krishna conscious, then it'll just sort of flow into your devotee relationships, your interactions. But if you're, agitated and caught up and not absorbed in the chanting, that will flow into your relationships. Yeah. And the only time it might not would be if you're a good actor. But even if you're a good actor, it doesn't take people long to see through that, he's acting. Yeah, it doesn't take people long. So yes, if we really chant nicely and hear nicely, then it will be so much easier to have nice devotee relationships. And the devotees who we have the relationships with, they'll really appreciate our association. Yeah.
And the follow-up, I have one more question. When Prabhupada sat and chanted, the tunes were pretty simple tunes, but the faith was intense. And that attracted practically everybody. How actually, a grahastha like us,
Oh, what?
how grahasthas like us,
Oh.
who are actually dealing with, as Prabhu said, so much material energy, cultivate a kind of faith, implicit faith in the holy name.
Yeah, well, if your family are pure devotees, or, not in the sense of like super elevated, but just serious, dedicated devotees. They're devotees first, and, whatever they're doing, other things second. Not like, well, I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a devotee. But rather, I'm a devotee, and to maintain myself, I have to work as a lawyer. Yeah. So if the family is brought up really nicely, like, you see some of these children, they're just really nice devotees. Really nice. And, there's an exchange by mail between Prabhupada and the wife of a devotee. And the husband was a devotee, initiated devotee for some years, but he sort of, he drifted. He wasn't really a serious devotee, committed devotee. He was sort of marginal. And so the wife wrote to Prabhupada and said, the husband's meant to be sort of like the spiritual master, or, at least the spiritual strength and so on of the family, but my husband just isn't. So what to do? And Prabhupada wrote back and said, then you become the spiritual strength of the family. Yeah, she was saying that, I'm just a woman. What can I do? But Prabhupada said, no, you do it. You take the lead in the family spiritually. So anyway, hopefully by good association, etc., your family members, particularly the wife, but also the children, will become good devotees, and you become like a real Krishna conscious team. Yeah, because Prabhupada said that Grihastha, some Grihastha was complaining about being a Grihastha to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, when I see white clothing, I see Paramahansa. Anyway, some thoughts on the subject. Prabhu.
Maharaji, while chanting, usually we should meditate on pastimes of Krishna. So, according to you, what should be the best pastime to meditate?
You know, the best pastime is the one that goes Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You know, Prabhupada did not really recommend thinking about anything while chanting. That I mentioned this thing from Mahatma Prabhu, the affirmation, when I chant, I chant. Not that when I chant, I sort of daydream, even about Krishna conscious things. You know, there is a place which some devotees refer to in Prabhupada's, I think, letters, or not in the books, where Prabhupada says that, you know, you can, while you're chanting, think of pastimes. Yeah. But, you know, we should, the chanting is the foundation. And we should get our chanting really together. And when we chant, we should hear the chanting. Yeah. But if, you know, you can't keep focused, and your mind, you've got to think of something, then at least think of a pastime, like the Govardhan Leela. You know, some very lengthy, detailed pastime with all sorts of, you know, interesting and amazing things that happen. Yeah. I mean, we should all know pastimes, and we should all be able to think, how many pastimes do I know? It's an interesting question. If you had to just sit down and recite all the pastimes that you know, how long would it take before you run out and you stop? Yeah. And you know, during the Govardhan Leela, different devotees were thinking of helping Krishna hold the hill. The men, they wanted to help him. They have sticks for actually directing the cows. So they pushed their sticks up against the bottom of the hill. But then Krishna let the weight of the hill come over that way. And you know, it started coming down on their heads. The ladies, like Mother Yashoda and her friends, they thought, now look at this boy. He's just a small boy, and with just one hand, not even two hands and just one finger. At least you could use two fingers, but it's only one. And he's holding this huge hill. We must help him. We will massage. Yeah. So they were massaging his finger and his hand. And Madhu Mangal thought, yes, I must help him. Small boy, big hill, I must help him. What shall I do? I will chant mantras. So he chanted special Shakti-giving mantra. And afterwards, when the storm finished, they all came out, Krishna put the hill back, then they all were discussing what happened and how wonderful Krishna was. And the men said, yeah, Krishna did really well. It was fantastic. I mean, it was mainly us with our sticks, But he did very well. He's a good boy. And then the ladies were saying, Krishna's such a good boy, he did so well. It was mainly our massage, actually. But he did very well. And Madhu Mangal said, as you can imagine, yeah, he did good. I mean, he's okay, Krishna. That's his sort of attitude. He's okay. He's a good guy. It was mainly my mantras, actually. But he did very well. Yeah, he did very well. But it was mainly my mantras. You can think of that pastime. Hare Krishna.
Marge, we were talking about chanting and all that. I wanted to ask, what's relatively more important, like chanting, reading Bhagavad Gita, like learning the scriptures, or going out for sevas in the temples and all? What's like the ranking for that?
Yes, they are all the most important. But the most important, ultimately, is chanting. And particularly chanting on our beads. Then there's kirtan. Kirtan's sort of easier to get into. Haridev Prabhu was making a point, which is, how many times have we heard devotees say things like that? But it's much less likely to happen that your mind will just drift off into work world or school world or whatever you want to say. If you're in the middle of a kirtan, particularly if it's a good kirtan and it's really, so easy to become absorbed, but still Prabhupada insisted that we must chant so many rounds a day, minimum of 16. He didn't say you must have, an hour of kirtan a day, or you must read for an hour a day, or something like that. But we have to vow when we receive first initiation. I mean, we all know that. I will chant 16 rounds a day, minimum. Yeah, so that's the main thing, actually, the first duty of the devotee. Of course, when devotees are young, like Gauranga, I don't know what happened to Gauranga, but maybe, there he is. Gauranga! Haribol! How many rounds today, Gauranga? Kitna mala? Aj. Oh, look what you've got, how wonderful. See, you couldn't tell him to chant 16 rounds. You probably couldn't even tell him to chant 1 round. Yeah, because he's not ready for it.
This you can give to everyone.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, so it's only when people are sort of, becoming a little mature, like adulthood is starting. It would mean, late school period or something like that, that chanting on the beads should really become the foundational activity. Otherwise, when they're young, then what's your name, young lady? Naya. How old are you? 7. Well, you're a big girl. You chant some rounds every day? Sometime? Not so much. Okay. That's okay. Just interested to know.
Maharaj, I just want to introduce, she is Naira, my new name. Her father is Yuan.
Just behind.
Just next. Yuan. Yuan. And his good wife. I don't know.
Nikul.
Nikul. So Mataji is from the Madagascar.
Oh, Madagascar.
No, actually no, she's from Mauritius.
She's from?
She's Mauritian, but with
My father is
Madagascar
from
descent.
Madagascar, yeah.
Yeah. So they are the new.
I see.
First time
First time
they
you-
Yeah.
get to know about Krishna consciousness. First time they are attending anything.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's
But I saw the ringing the bell. I think she do the
Yeah,
I do.
well,
You do the worship,
actually,
because
I'm a Hindu
yeah.
by birth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're next door, is
I'm
Yeah.
it?
just behind his
Just
house.
behind.
Yes.
Oh, behind, I
Yeah.
see.
just
Good. Nice to meet you.
So yeah.
Great.
so Naira is very happy. Means whenever we says this, she communicate.
Good. Very good. When children are too young, it's even though the chanting is the most important thing, and it's Yuga, Dharma, etc., etc. But if we pressurize the children, particularly small ones, then it has negative effects. Yeah, at least the immediate effect is negative. Maybe on a deeper level it's beneficial. Okay, devotees, I think that's it for the time being. And Prabhuji has now ordered me to distribute these magazines, these beautiful magazines. Look at this. Yeah. So, whoops, I'm going to see about that one. So please come, Naya.